Okay, hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Stephanie Bree, and I was watching a YouTube reaction to the 1986 David Cronenberg sci-fi classic, The Fly, and somebody asked a question that I thought as as an experienced journalist who has worked in the field for over a decade at the time when I left and went freelance, I feel like I am somewhat qualified to answer the question. In the movie, the scientist, and I'm not going to remember everybody's names, Jeff Goldblum's character meets a journalist at a gala scientific event where scientists are showing off their discoveries and projects, etc. And she introduces herself to him, or they meet. I think he introduces her, I don't remember. But in the movie, she tells him she's a journalist working for a publication and she's there to do a story. And he tells her, you don't want to talk to them, you want to talk to me. My science will, I'm paraphrasing, but my science will change the world. And she's like, well, everybody says their projects will change the world. And he says, they're lying, mine actually will. At that point, he invites her to his lab to show her his work. Whether he verbally agreed to do a story or not, it was implied from her perspective that she was there to get a story. He told her that his project was newsworthy, and so she went there on the pretext of, hey, I'm going to go see this guy's thing and do a story on it. Now, he is obviously socially awkward and didn't pick up on that, but I want to address the ethical side and also the legal side of how the movie plays out from there. Now, she starts prepping her tape recorder, and he says, what's that for? And she says, I want to get the quotes right. And he says he didn't invite her there to do a story, and she's like, yes, you did. I told you up front that I was here to do a story, and she had a legal and moral obligation to do the story at that point. And the reason why I say that is because, first of all, she told him when they met that she was there to get a story, and he told her that his project was more newsworthy than theirs, or at the very least, more important than theirs, which implies that she is going to be wanting to know what he's doing. If she's there to get a story and he tells her, hey, I got the juice, then he should know, listen, she's coming here to do a story, she's doing the story. Now, legally, I cannot say if she had the right to record their conversation without his permission. The reason why I can't say that is because that differs by jurisdiction. This movie was made in 1986, so the laws in that particular jurisdiction may or may not have changed. But I can say that in all instances, regardless of jurisdiction, the courts, if she does the story and he sues the publication, generally speaking, the courts are going to side with the journalist because the news he is doing, the work he's doing, creating this new technology that has the ability to disrupt the entire transportation industry, from shipping, warehouses, receiving, retailers. I mean, you could put one of these pods in your house, go to Amazon, buy whatever you want, and then poof, there it is. Now, we have seen in the real world how just online shopping in its primitive form, giving him your credit card and then waiting for, 2 or 3 days for a product to arrive at your mailbox, disrupted the entire retail industry. The fact that I'm not gonna put a number on it, but I'm gonna say countless jobs would have been at stake if his invention went to production and mass market. And the fact that because of that, it has the implication that it would disrupt the entire economy. The entire world economy would be disrupted if his invention went to mass market. That makes it newsworthy. And therefore, that justifies the reporter doing the story with or without the recording. Now, she could quote him, but she can't quote him verbatim. She can't do a direct quote. If she can't record the quote, she can either jot it down in her notebook or do her best to record it to memory. But ethically speaking, at that point, she should say, and then he talked about this, and then paraphrase what he said without giving a direct quote. If she was not allowed to record the conversation, and she probably, from what we saw in the movie, she wouldn't have. But she did handle it right by telling him, no, this is, I told you I'm here to do a story. You told me that your work is newsworthy, so I'm doing the story. And he said, okay, chill. I'll give you the story, but I'll give it to you on my terms. She agreed to that. However, the second thing people always bring up about this is her boss. Now, I'm going to give you 100% he was a creep, as an ex-boyfriend goes. And considering that their relationship was, he had previously been her professor, and now he was her editor, they should have never been involved romantically ever in the first place. Ethically. Legally, well, that's another story, but ethically. But I hear people say that he was a jerk because he was going to run the story anyways. When she gave him her notes, and then he said, I'm taking you off the story. This is too important. It's my story now. He did the right thing for two reasons. One, like I just said, this story's too hot to sit on. He has a obligation to the general public to get this story out there. As a journalist, that's his job. Ethically speaking, if you have information that has the potential to disrupt millions of lives, you have an obligation, ethically and morally, to get that information out there because it's too important. Second of all, he did the right thing telling her that was no longer her story because she became romantically involved in her subject, which is unethical. As a journalist, once they slept together, she should have been taken off the story. Period. End of discussion. That's not her story anymore. Now she can go bone him all she wants, but she's got to turn her notes over to the editor, who can assign the story to someone else, or if he's a good editor, which, from what I saw, he probably was. He did the right thing, because then he's like, no, this, you're too close to this guy, your judgment's compromised, we can't trust the work you're doing, but we know that this news is too big. And she did the right thing by, okay, I'm going to get you video of this guy, because he's not going to want to meet you in person, so she got a video. So, I will say, as far as the journalism was handled in the movie, spot on, 100% how it should have been done. Except for the fact that she should have quit or recused herself from the story once they became involved romantically. That's a little slippery, but considering that it ended up working out that way in the end because her editor did his job, I'm going to say as an ex-boyfriend and as a guy in general, kind of a creep. But as a news editor, he's doing what he's supposed to do. That's what that's what I would have done. I would have told her, listen, you're too close to this guy. I'm taking you off this story. End of discussion. If you don't like it, go work for the Post. Flat. I would have fired her. In fact, I would have fired her the day I found out she was sleeping with her source, because that is no. You don't fucking do that. She should have been. That's when she should have been taken off the story. Minimum, probably fired. So I would say that because of, he had a past relationship with her, which meant that he had feelings for her, and he knew the importance of the story. He was playing it delicate as best as he could, overstepping his boundaries, absolutely, but being as delicate as he could, considering the complicated romantic entanglements. Now, as far as having a non-romantic but close relationship with your editors and things, yes, before I was an editor or a producer, I had a good working relationship at the office and outside of the office with my editors, and then we all, once I became an editor, I stayed in good graces with the people below me, because that's not unethical. You want to have a good team, and in order to have a good team, you need to be able to trust each other, and the best way to trust each other is to socialize outside of work. It gets messy when you start fraternizing, whether it's social or romantic or whatever, with your sources, because then your judgment can be compromised. Because then you're going to be like, well, I have to protect my partner, lover, friend, etc. Well, if what they're doing is newsworthy, and you're withholding information from the public that you have, as a journalist, an obligation to release because you're protecting someone you care about, maybe you got too close to that person and you shouldn't be doing that kind of work, at least doing a story on that particular person. That's where things get messy, and that's where the movie, did, I would say, overall, aside from the messy interpersonal relationships between the two men and the woman, I would say the professional side of how the journalism was handled was mostly how it should have been handled. And I say mostly because I already mentioned the whole she shouldn't have been doing the story once she, started sleeping with him. But, it's not illegal. It's just, that's kind of not smart. Stay cool.